Good evening, good evening, good evening, buddy. And hello, I'm back. You had Paula yesterday, and she had an amazing episode. So if you haven't checked that out after this one, go and check that out. It was about a canceled teacher out of BC who spoke up and was trying to do the right thing after 40 years of teaching. They got rid of him. But thankfully for the people in BC, he's going to fight this all the way to the end because he should never have been fired. And he was standing up for the truth. And all he did was say, here's Canada's history, and they got rid of him. So go check that one out because it was a wonderful episode. Quick update on the Greg Arcade fundraiser. We're just about $22,000. Thank you, Canada. You guys are amazing. That's definitely going to help him and his family as they fight this brain cancer. And I really, really am pleased that Canada stepped up for him and did what they could to ensure that he had one less thing to worry about. When you're dealing with brain cancer, definitely you don't need to be worrying about where's your next paycheck coming from and how can you afford that natural food that you need in order to take care of yourself. So thank you, Canada, very much. And I want to give a bit of a shout out to David Drover and Aaron Graham, who invited me to a couple spaces here today. It was unplanned. I wasn't planning to do that at all, but I noticed it had a space, so I jumped on, and holy smokes, did we get into it. If there was anything you wanted to know about the Coots situation, some of the behind-the-scenes stuff, some of the people involved, and some of the rumors were put to rest today. So if you have, I think, like 6 hours, go ahead and check that out at another time, because it was chock full of information around the Coots situation, some of the things going on in the courtroom, some behind the scenes stuff, and absolutely where we're going with this. And yeah, if you're Stephen Johnston watching this, I know that you and the RCMP pay attention to the show from time to time. We're going to come with a due process. You are innocent until proven guilty, but I do believe we're going to find you guilty at some time in the future. So to everybody that was hanging out with us, that is the path forward. Let's focus on Stephen Johnston, the Crown prosecutor for the Coots situation, and let's see. Remember, innocent until proven guilty. That's what we said the entire time for the men. The same thing goes for the Crown prosecutors who were committing crimes in Alberta, February 2022. Well, folks, I got the big show for you. I don't have drums. I can't do a drum roll or anything like that, but I absolutely would if I could, because holy smokes, I am honored, privileged, and pleased to bring to you Jasmine Laine, who is a Manitoba radio host, a former Manitoba radio host, award winner too, I would like to add. And she is breaking out there with her podcast, and she's becoming one heck of a force here in Canada. And God bless her, because this is exactly what we need in Canada. We need good voices, strong voices, honest voices. And I also got Anita Krishna. I hope I got that right. She will correct me. But she is an ex-mainstream newscast director, and she kind of had the boot because she was telling some truth about some of that medical stuff that we all like to talk about, but can't bring to YouTube. You know what I'm talking about. It's that stuff. And she brought the truth, and she got the can. But that's a pretty common thing when it comes to this particular situation here in Canada, whether you're a lawyer, a doctor, or you're in media. You tell the truth, and they come after you. They go after your career. They remove your career. They remove your license, and they remove your ability to take care of yourself and a family. And that is a warning shot to everybody else who wants to tell the truth. You want to play with the truth, you can get yourself into trouble. And don't forget, this guy almost faced jail for telling the truth in the Coots situation. They called it a publication ban violation. Thank goodness the judge said no. He was trying not to. He didn't cross the line too far, and spared me. But it wasn't a full spare. I was warned that if anything came close to that again, I'd be looking at 2 years. So look, here in Canada, the truth is tough to tell. Like, I could absolutely lie all day long about the court. I can lie about the judge. I can lie about the Crown all day long. They won't touch me. But you tell the truth about what happens in that courtroom sometimes, you can go to jail. And these are just some of the landmines that we have to face here as independent media. It's difficult. There's very little money in this, as a lot of us have discovered as we're doing it. But there's a lot of, I would say, reward by making sure that you know that you're doing the right thing, you're getting it out there, and from time to time, people reach out and say thank you. So I also want to say thank you to everybody that was in that space. I faced a lot of questions, and I think we put a lot of things to bed, and some of the rumors were removed. And I do want to say thank you to David Drover and Aaron Graham. And now what we're going to get into is trying to fix Canada one conversation at a time. And both my guests, I think, strongly believe in that, because the truth in democracy is what we need. We got to hold everybody accountable, including the powers that govern us. And with the current state of the media, where we have legacy kind of leaning towards the Liberal Party in the current government, and it looks like alt media might be leaning towards the Conservative Party, we really need independent voices to kind of fill the gap, be unbiased, be neutral, and get in there and tell the truth. Because without the truth, we don't have much of a country left. So without further ado, let me go ahead and bring in Jasmine. Good evening,
Hi
Jasmine.
there.
Hi, how are you doing?
Oh, just peachy over here. Can't complain.
Absolutely. And where is over here? You don't have to dox yourself, but where is over here?
I'm still here in Manitoba. Yeah, it's born and raised. So I love the prairies. What can I say? Mostly because of these summers. That's the only thing that keeps me holding on.
Well, I spent my high school and my junior high years in Winnipeg, so I understand
Mhm.
what the winters are like. I did a lot of sandbagging as a high school student, and I definitely have a lot of scars from all the mosquitoes still. They're big out there.
Yeah, it's one of those provinces where I don't think we get enough credit for how amazing our summers are, but the winters are absolutely brutal. So thank goodness for cottage country in the summertime.
I love it. I love it a lot. And you got some good friends out there, Shadow Davis, Ken
Mhm.
Drysdale, even Todd with Winnipeg Alt Media. There's some really good voices out there. And I really appreciate it because Winnipeg is where I kind of grew up with the music scene. There's a lot of
Yes.
music in Winnipeg, especially in the
Yeah.
basements. You too?
You know what's so funny about that? You say, especially in the basements, there's a really popular club that is called The Basement. It's just with a whole bunch of local bands and whatnot. So, yeah, that's definitely, we have a really, really diverse and rich culture when it comes to festivals and music, especially art, all of that stuff. And again, we definitely don't get enough credit here in the prairies.
Yeah, shovel snow and play the guitar. Those are really the two things you can pull off in winter. There's not much left, but the Forks is a great place to be. I
Yep.
remember a lot of stuff down in Fort Richmond because kind of went high school down there,
Mhm.
and a lot of good friends still to this day are from Winnipeg. Good people.
Yeah. Hey, our license plate doesn't say friendly Manitoba for nothing. So,
Absolutely. Now, good day to Anita. Did I get it right?
Krishna.
Krishna.
Yeah. Close enough. Whatever. It's all good. Anita Krishna.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us today. And you were working with, was it Global that you were working with when you got yourself hired?
Yeah. Thank you for asking me to hop on. It's a real pleasure to meet Jasmine and you. I mean, and Jasmine, like, I love your thumbnails. They're just
thank
like,
you.
you cannot click past the thumbnail, which is total genius, right? You're like, what's she talking about? Because it's all different face. It's brilliant, right? It's
Oh,
really
thank you.
that's
She
good.
knows
We
how
got,
to,
huh?
I was going to say she knows how to market and she does a very good job at that for sure.
Yeah,
And caught my
because
attention.
you want to click because of the expression. You're like, and then it's great. They're fantastic, right? And you do have a very strong voice, and you are speaking from the heart. I can, like I can. The other day, I watched one of your videos, and you were just saying, just try to communicate with everybody. Just stop, like, not, no more be scared to say
Mhm,
what you feel.
mhm.
I've been like that for a long time. I'm
I
just one of those
myself as well, yeah,
people.
being in the
I
industry.
cannot not be that way. I have to just say, hey, what are we doing here? Does this make sense? Does this actually
Mhm,
make sense to you? I have no problem saying whatever I think, but then you realize, as polite Canadians, we don't want to be like that. We are tiptoeing around. We don't want to offend anyone. We don't want to stress anyone. And
mhm.
now we've gotten ourselves in some very difficult situations as a country.
Yeah,
But
I
just
would
for
totally agree.
but just as for a 30-second, my backstory, I reported and stuff in my career, because I've been at this for a long time, but for the majority of my career, I was a newscast director behind the scenes, so you would have never seen my face. But if you would have watched my work or whatever, if you watch global news, because in BC, I directed like all their shows there. There's lots of people that work there. I'm not like anything special. It was just one of the crew, and that was just my job. And then I also directed Global National, and then we had affiliate shows. So sometimes you could be in Burnaby, which is where I was based, and then you could direct a show in Winnipeg or Regina or Saskatoon, because we would team view into the cameras, and that was kind of cool. So we got to know people all across the country. So I worked with a lot of the anchors and reporters all across the country until
Well,
they
that's all.
threw me out.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a moment. And by the way, you both have a lot of fans. We're seeing these chats come in, and you and to the fans out there, you don't have to call me sir. Jay works fine. Around here, if you have a gun, we call you sir. But around, I'm just Jay. But Jasmine, let's go ahead and jump into your background a little bit. You're award winning, and yeah, you were on the Winnipeg radio.
Yeah, I did radio in Winnipeg predominantly live at least, but I also had shows in Toronto. I've been on air in Calgary as well. Radio is a unique industry that is constantly downsizing. So there's a lot of opportunity where things are syndicated. So you may be based somewhere, but you're streamed all over the place. So that's kind of predominantly my career would be talk radio, morning radio. And it's funny, I won an award, the Leaders of Tomorrow Award. It's a pretty prestigious one to win in the country. And I got fired without cause approximately 6 days after that award, which was just really something. Welcome to the industry, though, I suppose. And thank goodness I had YouTube at the time and was able to kind of pivot there. But, you know, nonetheless, the latter half of my career in traditional media was certainly not as enjoyable as the earlier years for various reasons. But I'm absolutely blessed and beyond grateful for the opportunities it provided me and the things it taught me that have led me to be able to do this independently now.
That is really cool, and that is a common story. Somebody says something, they start to tell the truth, maybe want to be a little bit more independent and get stuff out there, and then boom, they're cut off. And by the way, I lost my job with the government, the municipal government, a week after I won an award there too. Kind of weird. I don't know why they do that.
Don't win any awards.
Yeah, seriously.
But sorry, because I don't know Jasmine's backstory. You won this prestigious award. 6 days later, you got fired. What did you do? I guess you're getting to that part because this part I don't know. How did you get fired? And what was the reason they fired you?
I had no reason whatsoever. I asked my employer why, and he looked very upset and went like this. And that was it. So there's a number of reasons that I'm not stupid. So there's a number of things that I can think of as to why exactly it was that all happened. But yeah, I had started my YouTube channel where I was speaking on Canadian politics. Obviously I'm conservative leaning. And so I had started that a number of months before I had actually, lost my career. And so
that's why they probably fired you.
I'm sure it could definitely have played a role. There was also other things behind the scenes. You know how media is. It's a pretty awful, toxic landscape in most regards. So, yeah, it was really completely caught me off guard. It was the last thing I would have ever expected. One of my co-hosts had won the same award the year prior, and after winning that, they had gotten a big raise. They had gotten a big contract, an extra week of vacation. So when I went into the office, it was on a Friday after a show that we had just done, and instead they sat me down and HR was on the phone, and I said, "Oh no, this is not good." And sure enough, that was it. Came home, and I think at that point I was like, okay, well, I guess I'm fully going right-wing extremist now, as everybody likes to call me. Like, what do I have to lose? And right-wing extremist just means normal person, by the way, despite what the media likes to tell you. So
did they warn you? Did they give you any warnings? Like, were they like, Jasmine, your content on your platform is not jiving with our narrative, so you need to knock it off? Did they warn you?
I never got anything like that specifically. I obviously knew and was kind of instructed to play things safe. I would say the biggest issues with that, though, actually came from some of the people that I was working on a show with, who I think, and I'm totally speculating here, but it definitely seemed like there was a lot more ego behind it than anything else. My role on the show was not to be the smart person. I was pretty frequently just the random girl voice who didn't really get to say a whole lot. I would often be cut off when I tried to, or things would be twisted in a way at my expense to make everybody else have a laugh. And so, there was definitely something there in terms of people around me not wanting me to be me, because that wasn't the narrative for the show that we had crafted. It wasn't the character I was supposed to be on the show. And you know, while of course radio is you're talking live, it's not necessarily like every time you say something it's scripted out, but there are roles that you take on and things that you emphasize and things you hold back on so that the dynamic is most appealing to the audience. And I think that there was definitely a lot of that in terms of my content. There were a number of comments made by the people very closely around me that, you know, they definitely were not happy about the attention that I was starting to get and the audience I was building. And
like
I think that's
your co-host.
Like, yeah. And I think that was egotistical reasons for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I couldn't really stop it once the floodgates were open. So I'm certainly really grateful for everything that has happened since. It's, you know, out of my wildest dreams, how much the show has exploded. And I'm just really, really happy about all of that.
Yeah.
That is exciting, but I'm really pleased. You know, things happen for a reason, and now you're on to a better track. Now, when you lost your job on that Friday, by the way, they always break bad news on a Friday, right? To end that cycle. That's how this works, even in media. But when you got that news, was the first thing in your mind, hey, I'm free, I'm going to go do something, or, uh-oh, what am I going to do now?
Ooh, honestly, a little bit of both there, because I think I finally was thinking like, whew, okay, weight off my shoulders. And you know, there were so many things that happened in the country that year, and there were so many things I wanted to talk about and was kind of instructed not to. And of course, they do it in a way that doesn't affect any ethics or workplace policies, but you're not stupid. You know what they're saying. You know what's expected of you, what to do and what not to do without risking your job. So there were all kinds of things that I had always wanted to discuss that we just couldn't. Or if I would, you know, it was kind of taken out of me and somebody else would end up predominantly talking about it. And meanwhile, it was a story that I was really passionate about. And so there were just lots of things like that were really suffocating, I would say, and really disappointing as well. And I don't know why exactly it was like that. That's why I say I think there was certainly a lot of pride and ego that got in the way, as is routine in terms of radio shows. You know, you have three big personalities all kind of fighting for attention on a 3-minute spot. So that's definitely common. But I would say, I remember when it first happened, though. You know, I'm a big crier, and I have not actually cried over the loss of my job yet, and that was quite some time ago now. But so it just kind of felt like right away. I just remember thinking like, okay, I got to figure something out now, and you know, it's not like there's anywhere in the industry that's really hiring at this moment in time. So. Okay, let's just Jesus take the wheel, I guess, and let's see where you drive me to. So
I mean, that just shows it was not worth crying over, right?
Yeah,
I worked at Global for 24 years, right?
Did you start when you were 5 or something?
No, I worked there for 24 years. Wow. And I know. I did. And that was a big, good Lord, that was part of my, like, almost my makeup, my physical DNA, going into that building every day and sitting in the control room and working with all the people and all that stuff. It was a big part of my life, but I never cried over it. I didn't, after I saw what we did during COVID, I was like, I cannot get down with you people. You are mentally deranged. Sorry, because I don't know Jasmine's backstory. I want to know you were morning radio, and who was the parent company of the program?
I don't know that I will reveal that, but it wasn't at the time that I lost my job. It wasn't one of the top dogs. It was a smaller company. In the past, though, I have worked for Rogers Media as an example, which is a pretty big one. But when I lost my job there, it wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't like we were one of the bells or anything like that. Okay. So it wasn't Chorus. No, not Chorus. Okay. Though I do have a lovely program director from Chorus who every once in a while pops up and says some mean things about being conservative in my DMs.
Oh, really?
Oh boy.
Get over it.
Now, Anita, now for you, we know you didn't hit the tissue box, so you didn't cry either. But what was the first thing that went through your mind? Like, I'm free, I'm going to go do something else. Like, what were some of the things that went through your mind when you got?
I don't know. It was such an awful, ugly time at the time because I got fired right as the trucker convoy started. Like, I'm a director, right? So a lot of like I was a technical person, although I'm really horrible at things technically, but that was my job for a long time. Uh, but for the longest time, I didn't really pay attention to a lot of things that happened in news. But as all the COVID stuff happened, I knew right away. I knew on day one how what a fraud we were perpetrating upon people were, what a overreaction we were having day one, right? And it was almost like day two or something, March 20th or something. Oh, we're shutting the airport down. The borders are closed. Oh, somebody got COVID in a daycare. We became so sensational, and nobody was cluing into, is this actually factual? What are you panicking for? Who died? Where did this come from? What are we doing? Like, nobody was asking those normal questions that you would ask in a newsroom. So boom, I started to ask, and then I won't go into it too long, but as time went on, I really knew we were not telling the truth. I mean, plain as day, and calling us out on our facts, but no one was listening to me. It was like banging on a door and no one would open the door, right? Like, anything you can imagine about the origins, the lab, medication, how people are dying, transmission, PCR tests, blah, 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 was all a massive, you know what, which I can't, fill in the blank, right? So me going to the news director, the editorial news director, with all my concerns, all the producers, all the reporters, and to be met with just being shot down like everybody was in some sort of bizarre psychosis was crazy. And it was the first time that I ever saw journalists, proper journalists. This is friggin' Global News Network. It was the first time that I ever saw anchors, reporters that would just go, no, that didn't happen. No. What are you talking about? The lab? No, it didn't come from there. It was the first time I saw psychosis, where it's like, don't you want to look into it? This WHO investigation that they said nothing to see here. Don't you think you should be looking into it now? And that, since then, all has been revealed. But I say that because I was a technical person, but then I started to become an accidental reporter. So I started a Rumble channel, and I started interviewing nurses. I started interviewing people who ended up in the COVID wards, because I knew we were not telling the truth. So I wanted to know, what we're claiming this, we're doing the COVID numbers every day, right? We're doing the ticker on the bottom of the screen, and we're going 10 new cases, and sadly 4 people have died. And I'm like, who are the 4 people? How did they contract it? Who are the cases? Why are we not telling anybody? How many people are in the COVID wards? How many COVID wards do we have in this province? Like, none of those questions were being answered. So I became sort of like this accidental reporter, and I started a Rumble channel, and I started posting links to my Rumble channel on Facebook. And that's when management at Global were like, you need to take this stuff down. Wow. Like, why do I need to take this down? I'm not, I've got nothing to do with you. I named my Rumble channel such a stupid name. It's so hard to find me. I just wanted to put the truth out. I didn't care if 10 people saw. Basically, only 10 people saw. No, but like, I just needed to know I was going bananas. And that's why I started then podcasting. And then I started going to rallies, hearing about things that happened to women who were trying to give birth. I'm going to talk in euphemisms, and then I just kept going to things and forging ahead. And then that's how I got fired. So,
Anita, I have a question for you, and I don't mean to maybe take away from your train of thought or anything, but
okay, my train of thought ended.
Perfect. I'm very curious, because I know how it was on our side of the industry at the time. And there were certainly a lot of people who really bought into what else can I say other than the media psychological operation that happened around the globe during that period of time. So there were certainly people who did believe that, but there was also a number of us and people who were reporting on that and making the social media posts every day, who very much behind the scenes did not believe everything as it was being told and as we were telling it. And we would have those conversations privately, but how you're describing it, it almost sounds like in news media, at least, that actually wasn't quite the case. And people overall did actually buy into it. Or did you see that as well, where people would report on something that they didn't actually believe to be true just so that they had a job, basically?
Yes. I actually heard you in a podcast say that you worked with people that actually secretly believed it, but just towed the line. because
Oh,
they
yeah.
knew the consequences. Now, I would say that a high percentage, majority percentage drank the Kool-Aid. They believed. How could we be lying? How could, when we put Bonnie Henry on TV every day, how could this be a lie? They absolutely believed it. I had anchors tell me, "Oh my God, I'm so scared. I can't wait for my third booster or whatever, my boosters, right?" And then I was like, "Girl, don't be taking these and stuff." So yes, a huge percentage of them believe it. Take the first one you can get. But there were some people that I worked with, cameramen, people in the feeds room, other technical staff, where we would go into little rooms and talk amongst ourselves about how ridiculous we thought this was. And then people started to come to me to tell me their injuries. So there are global news employees injured. Some have now died. They're dead, And do you think, what's it going to take for those people to wake up? If you have three of these things and you go jogging and you end up in a coma, which is what happened to our the guy who organizes the camera desk guy, that happened to him. But the story that they told on air was like, he's a miracle. It's amazing. This guy survived death. It's like, well, did you put in the fact that you forced him to jab himself up? Another person, I believe, got turbo cancer, a young like lady my age, middle-aged, died. I believe she took, I don't know how to say this, but I'm going to get myself kicked off here, but you know what I'm saying. And there's so many stories I could tell you about people who literally died there. Husbands who had pre-existing heart problems, who took it and died, but the psychosis, they couldn't see it. They don't know what the culprit is.
I think it's one of those things that, and I understand it absolutely, because obviously it's so shocking to think that that would be a reality, that it sounds like a conspiracy. It sounds like you're a total nutcase if that's what you're promoting. But, as an example, this is a statistic from about 2 years ago now, but in the province that I live in, there was a pretty big reduction in breast cancer screenings. And the reason why that reduction happened, and it dropped by, it was well over a decade, if I'm not mistaken, was because there had been such a significant increase of people who were being diagnosed with breast cancer at younger and younger ages. And that had been happening for quite some time. And there was a lot of advocacy groups there, but I am familiar with a few people who were a part of some of those groups pushing to get those regulations lowered so that more women could be tested. And I mean, you can have your own thoughts on those tests. I've seen a lot of things on the internet about them that may, I don't know, maybe kind of make me scared to get them, but that's just me.
Yeah, me too.
But, there's something to say really, where even if something sounds kind of wacky and it sounds like it could very well be a conspiracy, if there's a common denominator amongst all of these people, as wild as it may sound, I do think at the very least it's worth investigating, right? And so that's one thing with this increase of breast cancer that we were seeing across the country. If I'm not mistaken, it had increased by like 254%. It was significant. And there was a common denominator there with a bunch of different women who were being diagnosed. And that common denominator was that it was anywhere from 6 to 9 months earlier they had all received one of their booster shots. And, sure, maybe that had nothing to do with it. Maybe it had everything to do with it. At the end of the day, though, when it comes to doing scientific research, you look for common what am I saying? You look for common denominators, right?
Yeah.
In the same way that if you ever become part of a clinical trial or something, they will ask you things like, well, what soap do you use? How often do you shower? What are you eating? They're trying to find common denominators to figure out what could be the root cause or what could exemplify something. And I do think that it is a shame in this case that obviously there's a lot of factors to it. There's a lot of conspiracy, and there's also a lot of fact and truth that has very much been suppressed. And it's a really big shame that there aren't more people who are comfortable, at the very least, looking into it, because you're scared to look like a bit of a whack job if you say something about it. But it's like, well, that's how we learn, though, is by maybe exploring some of those theories that that we're writing people off for, because there's a common denominator there, and that could be really significant. That could really mean something. And it's one of the things with that situation that I just found to be the most disappointing, and just so unscientific as well. Just the immediate, visceral and reaction.
Against the whole thing of what journalism is about. You look at the stats. If you're the health reporter, you're going to do a story on that. So there's increased risk. You're going to get the data. They come into the newsroom, the data. So that's a very worthy story for your local newscast in Manitoba, CTV, CBC. All of those reporters should have been reporting on that. And if we were actually decent reporters, we would be telling you the fact that what you just said, that it happened months after a certain thing, the third one, and then you would be talking to doctors. So you could talk to a doctor on one side, one of your own, because we all have our doctors, right? Like that we go to that say what we want them to say. And then you could go, those are the people we put on TV, right? And then the people, but if you were an actual journalist, you'd be calling up Dr. William Mackus, and Dr. Mackus would tell you about how these thingies cause an IgG shift in your body, which prevents your body from combating cancer the way you normally would. And that's why you're seeing this big uptick in cancer. And if you had any decency as a newsroom, you would report that to the public so that people don't die. And so when they fired me for talking about things like that, that's why I never shed a tear over those assholes, because they can go to hell, because that's how I feel about them. Because as a network, because I also directed Global National, on our national newscast all across the country, we deceived Canadians. And you're absolutely 100% right. That's what do we have journalists for, if not to look into this shit and tell us?
Yeah, exactly. It's not supposed to be propaganda and just, you repeat our talking points. And I mean, sure, of course, there's going to be times when you completely agree with a story or you have a different take on it. But I think that's one of the things that's so, just again, it's so disappointing what the industry has turned into. It really is. And it's also boring. Like the industry has become so boring. Like there's just all these surface level conversations, and every day it's like the same thing that you've heard 1,000 times before from somebody else. Like there's nobody that's breaking story. When is the last time there was a journalist who wasn't independent that broke a major story? It's been forever since I've seen that on a big scale. And I miss those days. Like it's just become too safeguarded, too cushioned, to do what we tell you to do what that we want you to do, and don't take risks, because if you take risks,
file day of, right? So anyway, go ahead.
So before COVID, let's go BC, before COVID, what was it like then? Were you able to just pick up a story, run with it? Did you have to get a permission before you did it? Did you have to get it checked with an editor or something like that? What was life like just before COVID for you? Let's start with Jasmine and then we'll go with Anita.
I would say, prior to COVID, we had a really big rise in transgender ideologies. We had a really big rise in some 3rd/4th wave feminism. So even before BC, we had there was definitely still limitations on things that you could talk about. In terms of the things that we broadcasted at the time, it's one of those things, and I've talked about this in the past as well, but it's not like there's somebody there who is instructing you, like, don't you dare say this. There are some moments like that, but overall, it's not like you have somebody really breathing down your neck and having to approve everything that you want to do. At least not where I was employed. But there's these things where you have meetings, you have conversations, you understand the state of the world, you know what will look good, what will look bad, and you also know and you see what happens to other people who perhaps get a little too carried away or a little too passionate about something. And so you don't need somebody to outright tell you you're not allowed to talk about this for you to know that you're not allowed to talk about that, right? We're not stupid. And so there was a lot of that and a lot of issues and even just some really big stories that, would maybe get preference because it featured somebody who was gay, because it featured somebody who had a surgery of some kind, and then they did a charity thing afterwards, but then at the expense of sheltering all of the other big stories because you knew that one was going to get more clicks or more people tuning in, or it's going to make you look good. The virtue signaling is just so bad in the industry. And so, before COVID, I would say certainly there was still an aspect of being careful and knowing kind of what to do and what not to do. But I just find that there was something really dramatic that happened in the media landscape as a whole during those years where I'm not quite sure. I honestly haven't given it enough thought, but I don't know if it's people who perhaps program directors and people like that, or writers, depending on what your job is, who almost got a little too power hungry and knowing how much they could just like lay down the hammer, I guess. And then that really continued, or maybe it was even just so many other people who it's like you're almost shell shocked from these few years where every day you're going in and, this is what you have to do today and you can't break that. And then it has a ripple effect. Everything has such a huge ripple effect. And I find that I think there's so many people who don't even quite realize what that did to them. And then, you exit those years, but you still have this pressure on your chest. Like you're still so hesitant and scared. You don't want to make anybody mad. You saw what happened to people who made people mad, and you don't want to be that person, right?
Yeah.
So it just the pressure has always been there, I would say, but very much so since probably 2017, I would say, was a year that I really started to notice a lot of these social issues that, went from you could go and call all of your friends dude or bro to suddenly if I called my co-host dude or bro, I would get a text from somebody who was upset with me for saying that because it wasn't inclusive language, which is ridiculous. Because I'm like, listen, if that makes me a phobic, I think I've been a phobic since I was probably 8 years old, because I've been calling everybody dude and bro for as long, probably since I came out of the womb. Honestly, my first words to my mom were not mama; they were, "What's up, dude?"
And dude, Anita, the same question right before COVID. And what I just heard her say is kind of when Trudeau came in, he changed some of the policies. He got rid of the fact that the government can't tell lies. There was propaganda legislation that was revoked. And then the media fund kind of kicked in around this time that she's talking about. So I'm curious if there's a connection there. But from your perspective, was there a lot of strings or anybody breathing over not necessarily you, but within the news organization before COVID to push a narrative, or did you have to get permission for anything?
I don't know about that. And I'm wondering if maybe I wasn't as perceptive or cognizant of it. Because I mean, I had when you talk about feeling pressure not to call someone bro and stuff like that, that I can't think of things like that. We're feeling like you got to say the right thing. Maybe I never paid attention because I'm a bit older. I had young children at the time. Well, they weren't even that young. I don't know. I didn't feel anything in that vein where I couldn't say something. I only feel like people sort of started to lose their minds maybe just a little bit before COVID with the pronouns, right? That we do live newscasts, and I remember I was working on the late night news, and we had said we had done some pre-records, and the anchor had said, Janet Smith, blah, blah, blah. She says that, her dog ran away or whatever, right? And then, but that she was not a she. She happened to go by they. So I remember the anchor was like, oh my God, she goes by they. She goes by they. So we had to re-record it. And I had to do so much extra work for that. I said, you re-recording this to call this woman a they? You know that that's not a thing, right? But it actually was a thing. And I thought it was one of the stupidest things. I go, I can't believe we are redoing part of our newscast to make a correction to call this woman they. I thought it was the stupidest thing, but we kind of had to do it. So I remember noticing stuff like that.
Yeah, you're definitely an extremist. I just want to put it out there. You're definitely an extremist. And here's something that we're all doing right now, all of us, because we kind of been programmed for this. We're all tap dancing right now. We're tap dancing around words. We're tap dancing around subjects. And we're being very careful because YouTube, Facebook, and other things. And now we're all kind of preconditioned to do that.
Yeah.
And that's not how I used to be.
Right.
I don't remember having to do that. But just to stay on the air, even with the truth, we have to tap dance. So how are your feet, dude? Are you doing good?
We're like castrating ourselves, or we are slaves to YouTube, right? You know what I mean. If you do a video, like I'm kind of new to YouTube since sort of November or whatever, but like if you don't make the algorithm happy, it doesn't move you the way you want. Like if all of a sudden you did a story on ostriches, Jasmine, or something, would your algorithm push you? Maybe it would, because you have a lot of subscribers, right?
Maybe it wouldn't, because I don't know a whole lot about ostriches, so that I don't know. I should try though.
They're like a lot of Canadians, their heads in the sand, right?
We have an ostrich farm here in BC, and they are PCR testing these 400 ostriches, and they want to kill them because they say that they have bird flu.
Oh gosh.
Yeah, they PCR tested them, and they want to kill and these are healthy birds. So that's a big thing going on here. So I did a story on it with the ostriches, and it doesn't move the needle as much as if you do political, you know what I mean? So in a way, you are the slave. Hey, maybe I want to talk about the ostriches because I think that's important. I don't care. But I think back to your point, Jason, yeah, you're right. We are self-censoring ourselves because it doesn't take long to condition yourself. So that when somebody dictates how you speak, that is fascism. That's locking it in, right? Fascinating. That's what they're doing to us. And we and everything that happened at Global News, where you cannot say things or report about medications or whatever, or you toe the line, that is what a fascist dictatorship is. So I find it really funny when people call Trump a fascist and things like that. It's like, no, you're living under fascism and you don't know it. And I remember when we had to get the vaccine passports and everything, I never got any of that stuff. And people in the newsroom are like, well, did you get yours? I said, I ain't getting this. What the hell is this? This is ridiculous. Show your papers, right? And people didn't get it, that they couldn't connect that you're doing what was happened in history. Do you not see that you're doing this? Yeah. Anyway, I probably went off track.
But that was amazing. Do it more.
Yeah, I love it. Fear is quite the driver, because we were told we were going to be killing grandma, right? You got to remember that, and you're going to be hurting others in the community. But Jasmine, are you familiar with the Trusted News Initiative out of the UK?
I want to say yes. I was just actually speaking with a friend of mine in the UK, and I swear that came up. Refresh my memory, and I will confirm if this is something I'm familiar with or not.
Sure. It was started by the BBC, but it contains the CBC, CNN, all of them. All of them are part of this group.
Thing. Continue.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of the narrative generation was coming out of. And shortly after the Trusted News Initiative was created, this is when we started getting these YouTube videos where they're all saying the same thing. Like, this is a threat to democracy. This is a threat to democracy. Like, they're all saying the exact same script. And this came after the Trusted News Initiative, which was meant to, they're saying, add trust back to news. But it turned out, from my perspective, to be where the scripts were generated. And things like 9/11, where the building was still in the background, but she's reporting that the building fell down. This is kind of where some of this stuff was starting, like shortly after that. And I'm not surprised that we hear like the exact same sentences coming out of the reporters and anchors, because they read off a screen, right, a teleprompter. But that's when we started getting those collages where everybody was saying the exact same thing. Anita,
you know what's worse than that is the people who post the same thing. It's one thing if you're an anchor and you have, a certain message, you're just reading what's on the prompter there, and okay, great, everybody happened to get the exact same one. That's one thing, but to have your own personal social media account and you're copy and pasting something, I've seen that all over the place, especially with the Democrats in the United States with these smear campaigns against Donald Trump, where I've seen collages of them that are literally, it's like 50 different accounts with a copy and paste message about Donald Trump and how bad he is. I've seen similar tactics as well in Canada, just not at such a large scale as they are in the US. But that to me is almost worse. It's unbelievable.
Correct. And that happened recently with basically all the European leaders had the exact same message come out about Ukraine after Trump and them had that kind of little blowout in the Oval Office. Word for word, verbatim, they had the same space and everything. So they copied and pasted, and that was scary. Anita, are you familiar with Trusted News Initiative at all? And have you seen some of these replicated messaging as well?
Yeah, I did a story on the Trusted News Initiative. I've forgotten most of it, but it is like a diktat, to tell the newsrooms what to think and how to operate and the line to toe. But you know what? I never saw any evidence of it in the newsroom. Like I never saw a document. I was never passed a document. Maybe editorial staff got one that I never got. You know, the Oxfam in the UK it's not Oxfam, Ofcom is what it is in the UK,
Right.
and then we have CRTC. Oxfam is something else. But I never got any correspondence about it. And I can tell you firsthand that I could type something in our rundown and that would go in the prompter for the anchor to read. So I mean, we were all writing our own scripts. Like I didn't write scripts, but I followed the scripts to know when to roll things as a director, right? And from my observation, I saw our anchors and reporters write their own script. So I did see that. We had writers, and those words were the words that went into the prompter. Although we had like a national network rundown too, where you could copy and paste. And so then you could copy and paste an intro, and every anchor would read that across the network. So I saw that. But you know, when you see that clip of not the mockingbird, but it's a threat to our democracy. It's a threat to our democracy. I didn't personally see that in the newsroom that much. So I can say that was, you know, do you know what I mean? Like I never saw copying to that degree. But I did see it to a small degree, that you can take an intro written by someone in Toronto, and that one intro would be read in Saskatoon, in Victoria, in Vancouver, same intro. And I'm like, are you so lazy that you're not going to change this intro? Right. You know, but I did see that. So, but then what I'm trying to say is I also saw people write their own words in the script too. Yeah. Okay.
I was just going to add to that. And as well, you know, radio and television, you know, they're like step siblings, I guess. They're very close, but also kind of hate each other sometimes. But I know even for us, there would be things where there would be one station perhaps that would start doing something. So as an example, during the pandemic era, there had been other stations that were reporting all of the cases every single day. And then there was people in our director positions that said, "Oh, well, they're doing that, so we got to do that too, because those posts are really taking off. Everybody's clicking them and looking at them." Yeah. And so I wonder sometimes that I've been doing so much research into psychological operations through the media lately. I cannot wait to publish a much deeper dive into that at some point in the future. But, you know, I almost wonder if it's just this ripple effect. And then due to how media operates, and you end up having a lot of people kind of repeating each other and almost kind of copying each other to an extent, because you want to make sure that you're covering all of the biggest stuff, that, you know, it's like, even if there's just one person in a market per se that has this influence, but that influence has a good result out of it, then that influence can affect a whole bunch of other people as well, even if they weren't given the same types of instructions. And I'm not trying to insinuate that that's what happened here, but I think what I'm trying to say moreover is just the incredible impact that media has, and the messaging that it has, and the way that it is perceived, and how it blows up on social media. And I just think that people don't give it enough credit. You know, there's so many people my age, especially, who would say, "Oh, well, hey, who even watches the news anyway?" And it's like, honestly, a lot of people do. I watch the news every day as a part of my show. But, you know, there's a lot of people who do watch it, who do get those influences. And you have smear campaigns on social media, like statuses that are reposted by celebrities on social media. Like, there's so many ways in which the messaging and the narrative is so unbelievably controlled that people don't even realize that it's happening to them. And then suddenly they just have all this animosity, and they feel a type of way, and they don't even understand why they feel that way, but everybody around them feels that way, right? Yeah. And it really is, it's just, there's so many small pieces to the puzzle that make such a huge impact. But the second you start to poke holes in it, and you start to know some of the things to look for, it's unbelievable how frequently you see it. I mean, even myself, I've been researching this at length for quite some time, and even the Mark Carney stories that we see in the news, it is unbelievable, those little details that most people would never even think twice about, but they do matter so much, especially if you hear them on repeat, and the impact that really has on a population.
Huge.
Now, in normal times, you know,
Yeah.
something like the Wee scandal or getting divorced and other things would kind of take down a government
Mhm.
normally,
Yeah.
but we were not in normal times anymore. And
Mhm.
I'm glad you brought up Mark Carney, because he seems to have taken it even a step further, where he's excluding media. The Western Standard was invited to an event and then not allowed in.
Mhm.
Marty up north posted, because he actually was a member of the Liberal Party and went there to, you know, see what was going on, and he had troubles getting in. And in fact, the Journalists Association of Canada or something like that actually had to write a letter about this, because this is not how you're supposed to be treating media. So it's even getting worse. And
Mhm.
I don't know if there's going to be a recovery from that in any way, shape, or form. But Anita, when you were working with Global, did they ever get shut out from like Parliament or talking to a politician, or had trouble getting anybody on the show to speak, like from
Of
the
course
government?
not. No way. No way. You can book anybody on the show. All the producers have all the contacts. Why do you think these MPs and members of parliament and all the politicians are always sitting on CTV bashing Capellos? Because she's on a network. I used to work with her too. So they've got the platform, right? So no matter how hard she grills them sometimes, they're still gonna go on. You'll never say no. All you have to do is go, "Hi, I'm Anita Krishna from Global News. I'm here to do a story." That's all you gotta say. You should wave your press pass, you get press accreditation. Now, as an
Mhm.
independent, if I tried to go and cover this friggin' Carney running around there, they'd throw you right out, just like they
Yeah.
did with Keenan Bexty and all that
Mhm.
stuff. But the good news is that you leave Mark Carney to himself, and he will shoot himself in the foot, because he
Oh
can't even
yeah.
handle Rosemary Barton and stuff like that, and the Toronto Star. So he's doing a good job annihilating himself. So I think that's the one good
I was
thing about it.
terrified of him at first, and I'm at a point now where I'm like, "Oh, this is fabulous. Yes, do more. Keep on
Keep
talking, Marky
talking.
boy.
That's
I'm
right.
here for it."
Don't People are wigging out because they're like, Pierre, you got to do more. Pierre is maybe doing a game plan. Maybe he's planning his strategy. Let Mark Carney finish himself. But the one thing about what you're saying about the media being pervasive, right? All you have to do is put a banner on the bottom of the newscast, right? Like
Mhm.
if you say liberals ahead in the polls, liberals are smashing the conservatives, that's all you have to say,
Yep.
right? And then that is the impression in someone's mind, in their day-to-day life. You can shape the newscast, can shape the
Yeah.
mind of everybody
Well, and think
like
about
that.
sociology as well. Human beings, most of us are definitely sheep. I'm a sheep. It's very rare to be a lion in this world. I don't really know many of them. I think all of us
You
are
seem like a
pretty.
lion.
I don't think I'm a
I would say
lion.
so.
I'm a baby. I'm not a
You
lion.
seem
Take
like
that
a
title
kind,
away
like a
from me.
good-hearted lion. Like you're on the right side, like you tough when you need to be. I don't know. That's my
I
impression.
don't know
Anyway,
if
go
I
on.
can
Sorry.
be. I, if my
Well, that's
mother
a
ever asks me to do something, I cave, and so.
Yeah. That's,
oh, look at this. We got a banner now. So we're now saying
oh, you got a
Anita
bad?
and
Yeah.
Jasmine Laine rock the Lavigne show.
Right.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for that, Padge. Now, what I'm going to kind of do with this conversation is talk about how the two of you and shows like this is how we break this. This is how we
Mhm.
start to get stuff out. You mentioned, Jasmine, that it's been a while since you saw like breaking news from like the mainstream and stuff like that, but you're seeing it more in independent.
Mhm.
Trump going on Joe Rogan may have done a lot for his victory, and Kamala not going on may have harmed her a lot more. And we're seeing a lot more podcasters, their profiles raising because people trust them a lot more.
Mhm.
Now in Canada, I think we're at kind of a bit of a fork in the road here. Either we survive Bill C-63 if they bring it back or something like that, because they're clearly targeting the voices. But do you see, was this kind of your mission when you got into independent media and journalism, to change how Canadians get their media and to fight that in order to help Canada?
I would say, first and foremost, we do have Bill 63, C-63 to worry about, but we also already have Bill C-18 and C-11.
11. Yep.
All of those things have harmed independents in the space in terms of how they appear on algorithms, in terms of being able to monetize. There are so many little details, especially of C-18, that people probably don't know about in terms of being an independent on a social media platform, and just how little you are credited for anything that you do, or recognized for it, due to the fact that you are not government funded and due to the fact that you are not necessarily compliant under CRTC regulations. But honestly, I would say, to be completely frank, I've shared my story a number of times, and it's not it's not really the happiest one for what actually caused me to get into YouTube. But to kind of summarize it, I don't want to get into too many details about it at the moment, but I was in a really dark place when I first started YouTube. I was probably the most suicidal I've ever been in my life.
Ooh.
I was really depressed, and for whatever reason, I was at a point where I felt like I was just so worthless and so meaningless, and I had absolutely nothing to offer. And being somebody who's a broadcaster who feels that way, it's the most crushing feeling in the world. And I had started YouTube initially expecting to have absolutely no followers at all. And I was honestly just trying to learn how to have a conversation again after being in such a dark place for a very long time. And I was so shocked right away with just the amount of people that found some sort of relatability in the things that I was saying that I just absolutely never would have expected in a million years. And I would say the reason why I started doing that, though, largely was because I knew 100% that there was no way that I was the only person feeling this way and thinking this way and wanting to talk about this stuff. I just knew that was absolutely impossible. But the biggest reason, I've said that 4 times, but this one is actually it is really, it has to do with mental health. That is the biggest reason, because I started to notice how much of a huge correlation there is with censorship, with propaganda in the media, with, not being able to afford things, not being able to get ahead, this hopelessness that so many people felt. And all of that related back to politics. And so there's so many people, especially younger people, who maybe don't think about politics too much, but politics is involved in your life no matter what, in every possible capacity. And I was so tired of seeing people who were hurting so bad and being shut up and stomped on and told that, you shouldn't be here then. What are you complaining about? Just told these lies all the time about even Chrystia Freeland. I remember her saying not even that long ago, like, oh, if Canadians who think the economy's bad, it's not actually bad. They're just in a vibe session, like just these gaslighting techniques. And in reality, no, there's a really big problem. And that's why so many people are feeling this way. And nobody is talking about that problem. And I think that I was at a position in my life where I was so low already that I was like, screw it. I'm talking about the problem, I guess. And I'm talking about this stuff that I know matters. And my reason for that is really nothing greater than I just don't want people to feel alone, like how I felt at the time. And so that was really the driving force behind it. And I suppose in that, though, yes, there's absolutely an aspect of, especially once you start to say something and it resonates, that you certainly recognize that, oh yeah, people are not hearing the truth as much as they should be. And that's why they're gravitating towards you, is because you are just kind of telling it how it is. And I do my darndest to fact check everything that I say and not get too crazy. But I think that was kind of a byproduct of the initial motivation.
That was
What
one of the
year
most
did you
beautiful
start
things.
that?
Sorry,
Oh,
that was one of the
of
most
course.
beautiful things I've ever seen. Your courage is strong, and there's
Oh, wow.
absolutely no doubt in my mind that you're a lion. I want to introduce you to one of my friends very soon, Counselor Lisa Robinson. I think you are going to absolutely love her. She's a Pickering counselor. She lost her salary for 9 months for speaking up and this kind of stuff. She's a lion, and you are a lion. That was the most courageous thing I've seen on my show in a very long time, since
Wow,
maybe
thank you.
maybe Theo Fleury, when he came on and expressed and shared us his history. And that particular episode saved a life. Somebody reached out and said they ripped up their maid's application after watching Theo
Wow.
tell the truth.
That gave me
So
chills.
you are courageous, okay? That what you just did gave me the chills, and I assure you everybody who's watching this agrees with me on that one. Anita, what did you think about that? That courage to
I was
provide that
curious
vulnerability.
that's so revealing, and that will help a lot of people to say that you're in a dark place, because when you're an on-air persona and you're beautiful like you are, like people think you have it all, right? And you're human, you have sadness, you've probably been through hardship. I've been through hardship. We're human beings. Life is hard.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
something, and we've been so shit on by the government. So I was just curious, what year you started that? Was it 2020 that made you start that? What year was that? Was it the
Uh,
COVID stuff that led you to be so down? Or
No, it
no,
was some stuff happening in
something
my
else?
personal life at the
Okay.
time. But I think there was that, and then just this. There's so many things that kind of played a
Wait, but
factor
what
into it.
year was it? It was pre-2020, right? That you
No,
started?
so
Oh,
I'm a newbie here. I've only been
oh,
on YouTube doing this stuff. I think this month is a year, actually. So I'm new to
oh.
this.
You
I had
started your YouTube a year ago?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Uh,
think it was
oh,
12 months ago this
good
month.
for
Yeah.
you. Okay.
Wild. Um, but so prior to that, I had definitely started to kind of speak out on some things a little bit more in
Yeah.
the post-COVID era. Um, and it was usually shot down, and that just doesn't make you feel very good. So, over time, it's like I feel like everybody reaches their breaking point where they're tired of being told to shut up. They're tired of being told, oh, you're so privileged. Like, just please leave me alone and just let me live my life. And this is what living my life is like. And it's just been so overwhelming, the amount of people I've connected with that have it's just the craziest thing in the world to kind of go from being somewhere where you feel really alone, and then you start talking and saying what you think, and you realize that you're not alone at all. And in fact, there's a process in place to make you feel alone and isolated so that more people don't start doing what you're doing. And there's this team of woke mob ideology ready to cancel you around the corner. But, there really is such a large group of people, such as yourselves as well, who are just the most wonderful people with really good souls and really good hearts and pure intention. And you see so much of that on this side of things versus self-censoring and trying to do right by everybody. And I am a really strong believer too that, it's like, as long as you do things with the purest of intent and you don't let your ego get in the way or anything like that, there's no real harm that can ever happen to you. There just isn't. So I try to keep that in mind because wow, there's a lot of crazy people out there, but yeah.
Let me just touch on that quickly because I cover lots of topics. Okay, I try to cover all sides, and there's this Khalistani movement here in Canada, and I've interviewed both sides of that. I've had people that said they lost people in the air bombing of Air India 182, and then I had people that they want a homeland and they want a safe place to be. And I've had both conversations. And guess what happened? When I first had that one group on, I got death threats. I had the other group on, I got death threats. In fact, I have to go to the RCMP station tomorrow to report another death threat that came in today. And this is just kind of par for the course now. People showing up at my gate. I'm in the middle of nowhere, and people are finding out where I am. So this is the new world I'm in now, where we have to be a lot more cautious and careful. Not what we say, but the real world, because there are crazies out there, like you said. Hopefully this isn't something you have to deal with, because I really don't care. I'll talk to anybody that wants to come and talk, and that upsets a lot of people. Now, Anita, when you were working with Global, was that something that people and anchors and reporters had to worry about? Like, were people that upset where they would be sending threats to the station or to anchors and reporters?
Regarding what?
Anything. Anything.
Oh,
that's a great question.
But like death threats? I don't recall any in my 24 years of working there. Anybody getting a death threat? Not even John Daly when he took down Glenn Campbell and stuff like that. When actually reporters were actually reporting, I don't recall that. I recall people having crushes on anchors and thinking
that's all right.
and you walk around the parking lot, and then we had like naked people hang out in the parking lot. We had like the weirdos that would come to the station because people on TV were like your celebrities, right? And so people would take a fancy to them. If I don't recall any death threats, maybe I don't know. I'm sure something happened. I just don't know about it. But yeah, I don't have any juicy story there.
No. And actually, you've answered my question, because under the professional mainstream, maybe there's some isolation there, or maybe people just treated it differently. But when you're independent civilian journalist, you're a small one, maybe they feel a little bit more brave to kind of do those kind of things to you, because they really want to shut you up. They want you to stop talking. Now, Jasmine, hopefully that's never happened to you yet. But
I get that all the time. It's par for the course,
really?
Baby. I'm good to go. Yep.
I usually
screenshot them and laugh about them with my mom and sister in our group chat more often than not.
Okay. So that means you're over the target. And a lot of people say, and I don't think it's wrong, that if you start getting this happening to you, like the government's trying to shut you down, the courts are mad
Mhm.
at you, and people are sending these messages, you're over the target, because nobody will go and death threat somebody because they're lying or
Yeah.
they're providing information that's not harmful to them or whatever they're up to. It's always because you've exposed something to someone.
And that's why they're
So
so upset about it.
yeah, but I got two little ones and I've got a family, and this is not what I thought was going to happen when I got into
Mhm.
this. I thought at worst people are going to say, there's that ugly dude again or something like that. That might be the worst, but no, we've had people show up at our gate, so
That's
we got to
horrifying.
it's now that is par for the course. So
Mhm.
Anita's probably wondering, I wonder if there was protection back in the days, but I don't think so. I think that the media landscape has changed so much that people think that they can. This is kind of like a coercion to us, so that we stop talking about a subject or
Mhm.
only talk narrative.
How
And we're
bizarre
not.
is that? Like when you pick that apart and you think about it. And I completely agree with Anita. When I was working in the industry, there was people who would be cruel sometimes, but never ever to the extent that it is now. And that is something that's just really eye-opening, and it's bizarre. Like first and foremost, who raised you? And secondly, it's so weird how there does almost seem to be like, okay, wait, no, you're on mainstream. So that obviously means that, you're credited to do what you're doing. And so you're telling the truth because you're on mainstream. And okay, sure, I understand that. And of course, they tell the truth on mainstream all the time, and they also don't tell the truth on mainstream all the time. So it kind of depends what you watch there and what your opinions are. But it's really interesting how it's almost like being independent. You almost immediately get painted with this brush where people feel as though they can say and do anything to you in order to make you stop talking. And they go to great lengths. It's quite interesting. I'm thankful that, I don't have my name on absolutely anything. So I'm like, good luck finding me. In fact, I might have to put up
stupid
a
in that I
bound.
use my real name, and sometimes because I'm so outspoken about the government and the lies of global news, which is a big thing to speak up about. I just thank God every day no one's come to my house because it's easy to find me. Or maybe they just think she's Anita just squawking away and no one's going to pay attention to her anyway, which is fine. But I haven't had any bad things happen yet. Knock on
That's
wood.
amazing. I'm
Yeah.
happy to hear that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No
very pleased.
threats, nothing. I mean, I got fired by global. The enemy was global. The enemy
Mhm.
hasn't been the public. The public has embraced me. The not the network. The
Mhm.
network didn't. And the people who are on the network sometimes don't know they're lying, because when something comes down on the wire, the AP wire, it's a compromised thing, but we don't know it. We just report it as fact because we've been doing that for so long. But when it comes down saying the lies, especially about all the COVID stuff, that is just taken as fact, and then it becomes a psychosis. So sometimes these
Yeah.
people in the newsroom don't even know they're lying. Well, how can it be a lie?
It
The,
came from the trusted source
it
or
came from
yeah.
the trusted source. Health Canada is reporting this. Well, Health Canada has a conflict of interest because Health Canada is funded by the pharmaceutical companies, and they all pay the media. We are subsidized by the government, not as much as the CBC. So we are completely a conflict of interest, even though we think we're the news, right? It's like we're not the news. We are just as hamstrung as everyone else, but we don't know we're deceiving you. A lot
Mhm.
of people didn't know that.
Let
Yeah.
me share an interesting story.
Yeah.
Let me that really opened my eyes a lot. Like, I was just getting into this. I was doing podcasting, and I went to the carbon tax protest to cover it because, of course, mainstream media is not going to go there. And I went to Crow's Pass. So this is the BC Alberta border.
Oh.
And while I was there, some people showed up with tractors. I don't want to say their names because I actually know who they are, but they showed up with their tractors and parked it on the side of the highway. Didn't block anything. Okay, and it was all good and fine. And I'm driving back to Lethbridge because I was covering the Coots trial at the time. So I was down in southern Alberta. So I drove back to Lethbridge. No problems along the way. Somebody sends me a post, and according to Western Standard, CBC, and others, there was a multi-car accident caused by these tractors, and they had the wrong picture. They had a picture of the highway by Calgary, not the one by Crow's Nest, but they described the tractors coming. So I know the highway that they were on. There was no car accident. at all. These tractors pulled up. The police were behind them. Nobody got a ticket. Nobody got arrested. Nobody got into any trouble. But you read the article, and not only did they have the wrong picture, they had the wrong information. So I contacted Western Standard. I'm like, look, this is bogus. There was no accident with these tractors. Here's the video of me watching the tractors come in. So I shared it with them. So Western Standard updated their article and said, according to the RCMP, and then they left the rest of the article alone, because originally it said this happened, but now they're saying according to the RCMP. So what I'm getting at here is the RCMP had a press release, and I contacted them as well and said, look, there was no accident with these tractors. What it turned out was there was a fender bender. Somebody was driving a little bit too fast and the traffic slowed down. There was a fender bender. No harm, no foul. But because there was two cars, they called it multi-car accident, and they put it all over the place. So factually, technically, it's right. But you can see what they twisted there, because they were trying to make this protest into public danger, and you shouldn't be doing this. And have you ever seen anything like that? We'll start with Jasmine and go to Anita. Have you ever seen something like that where you witnessed with your own eyes, then you saw the twist happen, and then it made it to the front page of the news?
Well, I mean, dare I say the convoy. I was not there personally. However, I do know a few people who were journalists, who were anchors across the country, who lost their jobs after live streaming. And while they were there doing their job to cover it, even though their employers did not want them to be there to cover it, which is just one of the biggest stories right now, kind of bizarre that you wouldn't want to be there to cover it. So they were there and decided to live stream or post videos onto their personal pages. And it was rather fascinating to see some of those people lose their jobs, others be completely reprimanded over it and have to take those videos down that they posted on their personal accounts. And then you see the news story come out later that evening or perhaps the next day, suggesting that, you know, there was all these crazy bad things happening there that certainly were not present at all in the footage that was actually covered from the event. I would say that was probably one of the biggest ones where we noticed that a lot. Even myself, I remember there was so stupid, but I remember I almost got canceled during that time frame because I did a story complaining about there was all the truckers there and stuff. And this is so embarrassing, but one of my girlfriends, she had just moved back to the city, and I wanted to make her homemade bruschetta, and I couldn't find basil anywhere because I guess one of the trucks that was carrying basil or something was a part of all of that. And I was just upset, and I was complaining about how there was no basil in the store, and just the way that it was twisted on me. I had a nickname in this city for a very long time that was Basil Girl, which I think is hilarious. So I allow people to still call me that. But even that, just like this total narrative. And I remember people saying how I was in total support, and of course, using all of the slurs that everybody continues to still call everybody there, and completely shaming me for discussing how I wanted all of this to be resolved so that I could get my basil, which was just like, it's so dumb and embarrassing. But like, I'm like, that was kind of the point, was that it was dumb and embarrassing and just like a dumb story because I noticed this. But the way that even that was twisted against me, and wow, the vitriol from that lasted a very long time, it's just laughable repeating it now. Cause I'm like, listen, bro, I just wanted to make bruschetta, like, get off my back here. This is insane.
Yeah.
So Jasmine had Basilgate. Did you have anything on your end? Did you see a story twist or change like right before your eyes?
Well, it was just so much a part of life that, because also that it's like everything is sensational. Like, but some stories are really sensational, right? Like the Las Vegas shooting or whatever. You don't even have to like embellish the headline because the headline is harsh enough. But like, you know, sometimes when we have fires, wildfire, Penticton is burning or whatever, we'd say we'd describe something as an inferno and all the highway is closed. And then when you actually, then I remember we had some wildfire problems in the summer, and I was supposed to go up to that area, and I was like, I don't think I'm gonna go. I've been working there so long, but they had done enough to scare me. Well, I was a part of it, you know, scaring the people. And then when I actually drove up the highway, I'm like, there's nothing wrong. It's just a little bit of smoke, right? But if you don't sensationalize it, you have no show. So news is a show too, right? Like we got to make it juicy. That's why we whiz bang all the headlines and do all that stuff. It's so much a part. You can take the smallest little story and sensationalize it. So it was done so much that it's par for the course, right? You know, if you got a naked homeless guy wandering around the street or something like that, naked man, drops his pants on police, in a police takedown. And it could just be some guy who dropped it could be a small thing, but you put the music behind it, you put the banner up there, you got a show, you got drama.
And then you're also teasing for the next hour. And coming up in the 7 o'clock, my goodness, somebody with their pants down in front of the RCMP. What happened here? Find out.
Yeah, exactly. The show, right? That's the whole, it was an everyday thing. So everything was like that. So I am indoctrinated into not even noticing that. That's part of life.
Which is I almost feel like that's a bit of a blessing, though. In some regard, you're not as taken over by some of those wild headlines and wild stories, and that can almost help you to get to the meat of it.
Yeah, I just want to find out what the hell. Tell me, okay, what happened? Tell me what happened. Yeah.
Like you hear something like, "Are your children safe?" Maybe not. Find out at 6. Like, tell me now. Like, what's going on here?
What are you talking about? I'm about to drive them off to daycare. I want to know right now. Should they not go to daycare today?
Yeah. Oh, you can scare the mothers. Once you got the mothers scared, you got something. Like that's another trick, right? The measles or whatever, however you want to manipulate a mom trying to. It's really quite insidious, to be honest, but yeah.
Now going forward, I love the word that you used there, indoctrinated, and definitely journalism school and that kind of stuff. There's a type of indoctrination that happens there. You kind of have to follow what's going on, listen to your editor, all this kind of stuff. But some of us didn't go through that. I certainly didn't go through that. And that's what makes me a little bit more raw, maybe a little bit more naive as I'm doing this. But I think that's what Canada's looking for now. So we got about 15 minutes or so before we cut over to our supporters, because we're letting this run a little bit long. But I want to kind of highlight how independent journalists love to seem to work together. I got 2 of them on my show. Like, it's super easy. And we seem to work together a lot. This is not something you see in the mainstream. You don't see CTV on CBC or anything like that.
No way.
But what we're creating is a bit of a culture amongst independent journalists to share, work together, share guests, share stories. And I think that's a very good thing. So Jasmine, as this is growing, as you're growing your platform, and by the way, you're going to be highly successful, so keep it up. As you're growing your platform, do you see this as part of the ecosystem now in journalism when it comes to independent and citizen journalists? And how do you feel about that? Because my first approach to this was to platform as many as I can, because they can't whack us all. But if we only have a couple big ones, they can silence that one and then we're done. So my idea is, let's just have a whole bunch so they can't whack us all. Like we're a bunch of moles that they can't get rid of in order to survive. Like, this is a survival technique. Do you see that ecosystem? Yeah. Do you see that ecosystem developing?
I absolutely do. And I absolutely love every second of it. There is the human experience is something that nobody can take away from us. And it doesn't matter how much they want to silence you and cancel you and tell you that you're wrong or lying. It's like, there's so many people out there that have views similar to ours. And I just think it's incredible to be able to get together. Both of you are people who I am officially meeting for the first time today, and look at the wonderful conversation we've had, and I love that. And it's real. That's the thing. It's so real. It's off the cusp. I didn't even really know what we were talking about today. I just hopped on after eating some ribs and away we go.
Was there any basil involved?
Basil? No.
And look at how amazing that all went, right? So I certainly see that as being a huge advantage in the media independent landscape right now. And I'm starting to see more people do that as well. And I really do love that. Like, I think it's so unbelievably needed right now, because it's like, there's so many people, and perhaps coming from media, I feel more so repulsed by this, but there's so many people where you just get in your head and you're too egotistical, you're too prideful, you think you're the best in town, and it's like, you're not. There's everybody else is really great in their own way. They have things that you don't have, and that's beautiful. And let's use each other, obviously, for all of those amazing points of view and perspective and talents, in a way that traditional media doesn't do. It is very isolated into this little echo chamber, and we need to get out of that big time.
Anita, do you think this would have ever happened back in the old days? Sharing content and working together, because they were very siloed and they're very competitive back then, right?
Yeah, well, I come from the, you're right. Like global, we're competitors, right? Global CTV, CBC, right? In City TV, right? And I've worked for all of them except for CBC. So you would never share like this. You would never on our newscast run a story from CBC. You might have Olympic footage that you credit and stuff like that, but you get your own. You do your own, right? So there is a big love. I'm noticing it more now and support, like, because there's so much content. Clyde, everybody does their own thing. Like Clyde, I love the pleb. He makes me laugh. The Clinton Jaws, I think, is the biggest podcaster in Canada.
Clinton Jaws is my best friend. He doesn't know it yet, but I went through a phase where him and I were talking more than I even talked to my own mother. And I was like, okay, we need to stop making so many jokes back and forth. I need to pay attention to my family now.
Yeah, but Clinton Jaws has his own niche. Like he does the funny stuff. He does the American stuff. He does Canadian stuff. He does his own thing. He is not I don't know if he interviews people. He doesn't seem to interview people. He just does his own thing, but he is probably the most successful one, or the one with the biggest numbers, probably much as a surprise to himself. And like all along, Glenn from Bright Light News, he doesn't do it anymore, but he was amazing. Like, I mean, we could go through this laundry list. Portuguese Pie, I really like. A Moose on the Loose is excellent. Everybody's doing their own thing, a little bit similar, but doing their own thing. Juno News is coming up. You know what we need? Like, because I got fired, I have a mortgage, I have children, I have a family. I'm not a full-time YouTuber. I only make videos after I wash the dishes and cook dinner, right? So what we are probably missing in the media landscape is a 30-minute, half-hour newscast. Right. Bang, 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 where our own material is sourced. Like, this is what I'm thinking of now. We need this. Like, if I would love to create something like that, but I don't have to. I don't know. And you could take people like Daisy Media, because they're all going out. Anybody with an iPhone, we can make our own newscast, right? Because a lot of us podcasters still are doing clips using Vashi, using a newscast. We are still using the news. And as much as I don't like the news, that is the one thing that's missing in independent media right now, is the comprehensive newscast. If I don't need to know something, I don't sometimes have time to watch a 2-hour podcast. I need a 3-minute story, and I need that. I need a reporter. That's how my brain works sometimes. So I think we're needing that. And David Creighton and all of us could maybe figure out our own network, and we probably have a lot of power in that.
It's funny you say that, but it's coming.
It's coming.
Whether Rachel Parker is entering the scene. Hal Roberts is entering the scene. There's a few more that's entering the scene. What you just described. Hal Roberts,
from Bridge City News.
Yep.
Yeah. He's
so stay tuned.
Actually, they do a good job. They do.
Yeah, stay tuned. And you actually just said something great there with Daisy Media. So Chris Daisy, wonderful. He's getting all the good video. So he actually captured Trudeau's final goodbye when he was leaving. And you saw in the mainstream media all over the place, they were using his clip. And I captured some video of Danielle Smith at a town hall here in Alberta not too long ago. And then CBC Edmonton used it, and Global used it. And I was like, oh, wow. Now, ideally,
they're supposed to pay you. They're supposed to pay you for stringer footage. You're supposed to get a couple $100.
No, I didn't receive any bucks.
Send them the bill, and don't give them your footage without that money and a credit.
They gave me a credit, but they didn't even ask. It was just somebody sent me the clip, and there it was. Yeah, that's kind of the way it works. They're taking from us, and without even asking or following the normal guidelines. But what I was trying to get there is we're breaking into legacy because we are capturing those clips. Trudeau leaving was captured by Daisy Media, and it's being used everywhere. Jason Levine captured Danielle Smith talking about AHS, so it's starting to be used. So now that I know they're supposed to pay me, maybe I'll send an email. But
it's stringer footage. So normally they will pay you. They'll pay you. We used to pay the stringers. We give them a couple $100.
I got to leave the house more often. My goodness.
Go out with your phone.
Well, maybe I just need Anita to make a phone call. I'll split it with
Yeah.
you 50-50. But Jasmine, what I'm going to get at is, are we going to either replace legacy media, or are we going to force them to change as we continue to grow? Because they're not stupid. They're business people. And they're going to see their numbers drop and our numbers go up. So is that going to force them to kind of change to be more truthful? Or are they going to try and replace us in the future? What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I mean, if I can be completely frank,
Please do.
I've been doing this for a year, and my views are greater than that of any show I've ever worked on. So, to my knowledge, they have not changed at all thus far. I imagine that they will have to, though. Like any good business, you are absolutely going to have to pivot. The one thing I suppose that they have, and I guess we'll have to see how this works out in terms of advertising sales, and that's how they make their money, right? In most cases, at least, unless you're, some outlets. But I almost wonder if there could be a potential where you start to see some of those ad dollars significantly drop, and you get to a point where it's like, okay, well, we can't just keep firing people because we can't afford them anymore. So what are we going to do here? And we'll see about that. I guess, some of the difference, I mean, for myself, at least, I'm not behind any paywalls. There's some creators who are. I don't have anything like that on my show, but at the end of the day, the one thing that mainstream media does have is that for the vast majority of its users is that it is completely free. And so that is an advantage that they have, is it's free for the user. And, you're seeing more and more conservatives who are going behind paywalls, either so that they can pay their own bills, or even just because they don't want to be censored or have bot attacks and whatnot. So I think there's a lot to unpack there with it, but I believe that if they don't make some very serious shifts, and not even so much being like, okay, well, I guess you guys are totally Trump supporters now and all of your coverage, but just to be back to the center and to have even more opinion pieces or something, like there's going to have to be some sort of a shift, because it has been far too long of the same rhetoric, the same types of narratives, and they're tiring, and they're boring more than anything. They're just really boring.
And Anita, I was sitting with a CBC reporter during the Pat King trial, David something, I can't remember his name right now, probably on purpose. But he reminded me that, like what Jasmine just said there, was CBC's not behind a paywall, but $42 for every Canadian, because they get $1 billion given to them from taxpayers. So actually, indirectly, Canadians are paying every man, woman, and child in Canada $42 towards the CBC to keep them going. Do you think they're going to have to pivot? Are they going to continue to be taxpayer funded, or are they going to just go away? Are we going to replace them over time?
I don't know. I mean, that would take government legislation. I know Pierre Poilievre always says he wants to keep Radio Canada, but defund the CBC. And quite frankly, I don't care if mainstream media falls on its face. I would like to see them do that. I don't want to see a penny of my tax money go to the CBC, although they were good back in the day. Come on, they were the fifth estate. They had good programming for many, many years, and they lost us at COVID. So they blew it, okay? And you can blow it. Let's say they blew it so badly that it completely affected people's lives, right? Like, you know the word I'm trying to say, but I'm not going to say, like, fatally affected people, right? So you've lost the cards, in my opinion. Not a penny of my tax dollars should go to fund you. And of all of us, the thing I resent is, like, when you work in a newsroom, I could just go to an editor and go, cut me 30 seconds of B-roll of Trudeau coming out of the parliament. Cut me a clip of this. I want this soundbite of the mayor. Get that viz of this. Like, I have editors. I have a feed room. We had a helicopter. I have writers. We have everybody. When you are dicking around on a podcast by yourself, I'm cutting video, finding stuff, going to Twitter, doing it by myself. My light falls over. I'm by myself. I have no researcher. I have no producer. I have nobody briefing me. I come home from work and I want to do a video, and I got to sort of think, okay, I need to know the facts about this, and I have no one helping me. And we're doing, all of us podcasters do it by ourselves with zero funding, being poor. I mean, like, I have a job now, right? But you know what I mean? You get nothing unless you get successful, right? So I resent the money that they make, and I resent all the advertisers that advertise on Global and after everything that's happened. I think that you come and advertise with us. I'll run a quick commercial for you, and maybe we will take over that way. But for me, I don't care if they die a death, because they deceived everybody, and I'm done with them. So I don't care anymore what happens to them. I don't, but they'll still go on. It's not going to be an entity that I think will dissolve. I
agree with that.
So. Yeah.
Yeah. I think there will always be something there, but it will change. It almost has to. And, for myself, in terms of all of that, I know plenty of really amazing people who have very similar views to me that are just trying to keep a job as much as anybody else in an industry that is downsizing every single year, who work for some of those big organizations or big companies. And I don't wish anybody out of a job. I don't really wish any massive ill will towards most people, at least. But at the end of the day, it's a business model, and I don't remember seeing the government giving all kinds of money to that local ma and pa shop that was in operation for 50 years and had to close their doors just a few years ago. But I see the government giving money to the CBC, who has routinely had an incredibly biased media broadcast. And yeah, of course, there's some things that they put out that I'm like, oh, great. I probably wouldn't have heard about that if it weren't for you. Like if it's something that's really local, I find it's usually fine, usually. But for the things that really, really matter, it is overwhelmingly biased, and the scrutiny that they give one over the other is just absurd. It's so despicable. And it hurts my heart to know that there are other people who are really struggling. That boy, oh boy, could you honestly, Anita, imagine if you got $1.4 billion this year. Think of all what you could do with that. Seriously, I would end hunger in Canada.
Absolutely. Like if somebody handed me that, I feel like I would fix all of the problems. You know what I mean? That's an astronomical amount of money. And what do they do with it? If somebody handed me $500,000, I'd probably start a little mini network.
Yeah,
I know who I'd hire, and I'd probably do a daily newscast. But at the moment, I go work a normal job because that's what I do now. And that's the thing. And that's why I resent these buggers so much for the lies. For the lies. Yeah.
And then for continue profiting off of it as well. And it's just, if you have a bad business model to the point where you are not bringing in enough sales, that you are completely reliant on this subsidy from the government, of which they're looking to increase by another billion. I saw something that they're wanting to 2.3 or something. Wow. If you're struggling that bad as a business, that is the only way that you stay afloat. To that, I say, well, it's time you get a better planner, and it's time you maybe try out some new marketing, and it's time you pivot and adjust and adapt in the same way that any other business has to. Of course, I don't want to
start a YouTube channel and get subscribers and go and do it yourself. You can't have my tax money anymore.
Now, speaking of that, we're going to cut over to our subscribers, because that's how we keep our lights on. We have a small fee, a monthly fee, and we have a small little group that's very, very supportive of this show. So if you don't mind, ladies, or dudes, whatever you prefer, we're going to jump over.
Okay. No.
Yeah. And I'm so sorry I didn't ask for your pronouns, and we didn't do an land acknowledgement, but maybe I'll get canceled after this one. But just hang on a second. We're going to play a quick little video and cut over to our supporters, where we'll have a couple questions for you both. There you are, public. Share this out. This is independent media. This is what it looks like. This is what it sounds like. And this is what it feels like. We absolutely are going to be changing it. Whether legacy media pivots, destroys themselves, or dies a quick death, we're going to find out. But it's going to be independent media that's going to break that news. So we'll let you know when that happens. So public, thank you very much for hanging out with us. And remember, I say this every single time: take care of yourself and your family. Make sure you shake the hand of a neighbor or a stranger, especially if you see these two walking down the street. You shake their hands. And why do we keep reminding you about this? Is because I love you all very much, and God bless. All right, folks, that's a wrap on the public portion of today's show. Thank you for watching. If you found this valuable, please share it with friends and family. Want to connect with the Lavigne Show community? Become a free member today and join the vibrant space dedicated to champion justice, accountability, and open dialogue. Engage with myself and fellow advocates, and stay in the loop on our latest broadcasts. Want to do even more? Become a supporter for just $7 USD, $10 Canadian monthly. If you can afford more, you're welcome to increase your support, helping us stay truly independent. Supporters unlock full, uncensored live streams, interactive Q&As, behind-the-scene content, and so much more. Ready to join? Head over to thelavigneshow.com to become a member or supporter. If you have any questions or need help, email members@thelavigneshow.com or call or text 587-673-9955. Supporters, we'll see you shortly. Thank you, and God bless.